Everybody, welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, buckle up, because today we are diving into a story that has the entire hockey world absolutely buzzing. And I mean, the whole league is talking about this right now. The Toronto Maple Leafs, one of the most scrutinized, most talked about, most passionately followed franchises in the history of professional hockey, have just had their entire world flipped upside down, and the real truth, the unfiltered, uncut, behind-the-scenes truth about where this organization actually stands right now is finally coming out. And let me tell you, it is even more jaw-dropping than anyone outside of that locker room ever imagined. So if you have been following the Leafs story this offseason, if you care about what happens in Toronto, if you want to understand what is really going on inside one of the most iconic buildings in all of sports, then you need to stay with me for this entire video, because by the time we are done here, you are going to have a completely different picture of what is happening with the blue and white. Let's start with the elephant in the room, the thing that every single Leafs fan has been talking about since the moment the 2025-26 season came to a devastating and embarrassing close. The Toronto Maple Leafs finished the 2025-26 season with a record of 32 wins, 36 losses, and 14 overtime losses, which placed them 8th in the Atlantic Division, and for the first time in nearly a decade, they did not qualify for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let that sink in for a second. The Toronto Maple Leafs, a team with Austin Matthews on their roster, a team with one of the highest payrolls in the entire NHL, a team playing in Canada's largest market with one of the most passionate fan bases on the planet, missed the playoffs entirely. And the fallout from that was immediate, it was brutal, and it was absolutely necessary. President Keith Pelly made the decision to dismiss Brad Treliving as general manager of the Maple Leafs, and that single move set off a chain reaction that has completely reshaped everything we thought we knew about this franchise. Because what came next was not just a roster overhaul. It was not just a few signings and a couple of trades. What the Maple Leafs did this summer was essentially blow the whole thing up and start building from a new foundation, and the guy they brought in to do it is someone whose reputation in this league is as sharp and as aggressive as they come. New general manager John Chayka took the mandate from Keith Pelly and ran with it, and his first offseason with the organization has been nothing short of extraordinary. Now here is where the real truth starts to reveal itself, and this is the part of the story that most people in the mainstream hockey media have been dancing around but have not fully confronted yet. The Maple Leafs for years have been stuck in a cycle. You know the cycle. You have lived through the cycle if you are a Leafs fan. They would make the playoffs, they would get bounced in the first round, they would make some tweaks, bring back mostly the same core, and then do the whole thing over again. Year after year after year. And each time, the fans were told just be patient, just trust the process, just believe in the core. But the core was never fully committed to, and the structure around the core was never properly built. And that is the real truth that is now coming out. The Leafs were not just unlucky. They were not just cursed. They were mismanaged at the organizational level, and the decisions being made on the roster construction were fundamentally flawed. Austin Matthews himself went through an injury-riddled campaign that ended with the Maple Leafs missing the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade, and now heading into the 2026-27 season, the spotlight has once again shifted directly to the team's captain. And this is where it gets really interesting, because Matthews is now entering the final stretch of his current deal, and the Toronto Maple Leafs appear to be doing everything in their power to prove they are still in win-now mode entering this season. But the question that every single analyst, every single pundit, and every single Leafs fan is asking right now is this: can Austin Matthews actually carry this team to where it needs to go, or has the window quietly, painfully begun to close? The answer to that question is tied directly to everything Chayka has done this summer, and what he has done is genuinely shocking in the best possible way. Let's talk about the goaltending situation first, because for years that was the one area where the Maple Leafs never truly solved the problem. They had Campbell, they had Samsonov, they had Stolarz, and while Stolarz showed flashes, the organization never had that anchor in net that championship teams require. That changed dramatically this offseason when the Maple Leafs signed Sergei Bobrovsky to a 3-year contract on July 1st, bringing in the future Hall of Famer to immediately step in as the team's #1 goaltender. Now some people are going to look at Bobrovsky's age and say this is a gamble. And yes, the 37-year-old is coming off a season where he went 27 wins and 23 losses with a 3.07 goals against average and a .877 save percentage in 52 games with the Florida Panthers. Those are not great numbers. Nobody is pretending they are. But here is what people are missing when they reduce Bobrovsky to just those stats. This is a man with 2 Vezina trophies on his shelf. This is a man who was the backbone of Florida's Stanley Cup championship run. And now, in Toronto, he will be reunited with Anthony Stolarz, who served as Bobrovsky's backup during Florida's Stanley Cup run in 2023-24. That familiarity, that chemistry, that shared experience of winning the biggest prize in hockey, you cannot put a price tag on that kind of institutional knowledge walking into your locker room. But the Bobrovsky signing is only one piece of the puzzle. Because John Chayka also recognized that the defensive unit in Toronto was broken. It was not just underperforming, it was structurally broken, and no amount of goaltending brilliance was going to compensate for the chaos that was being created in front of the net season after season. So he went out and fixed the blue line, and he did it in a massive way. Darren Raddysh, a Toronto area native, was acquired in a sign-and-trade with the Tampa Bay Lightning on June 19th, signing an 8-year contract. And the numbers that Raddysh put up last season in Tampa are exactly the kind of production the Leafs have been desperately searching for on their back end. The 30-year-old posted career bests in goals with 22, assists with 48, and points with 70, along with a plus-minus rating of plus 21 in 73 games with Tampa Bay last season, and he immediately becomes Toronto's quarterback on the power play, where he scored 10 goals in 2025-26. 10 power play goals from your defenseman. Do you understand how transformative that is for a team that has struggled with their man advantage unit for the better part of the last 5 years? Raddysh is not just an upgrade. He is a foundational piece, and the fact that he is from the Toronto area, the fact that he grew up watching this team, the fact that he signed an 8-year deal to be here, that tells you everything about the level of commitment that is now flowing through this organization. And then there is the move that sent the entire hockey world into a frenzy. The move that had every analyst, every scout, every front office executive across the league doing a double take. The Toronto Maple Leafs landed the first overall pick in the 2026 NHL draft, and they used it to select Gavin McKenna. The native of Whitehorse, Yukon, was selected number 1 by the Maple Leafs in the 2026 NHL draft on June 26th, and will get every opportunity in training camp to earn a spot among the top 6 forward group. Now let's talk about who Gavin McKenna actually is, because the hype around this kid is not manufactured. It is not media noise. It is the product of watching someone operate on a hockey rink with a level of intelligence and skill that scouts have not seen from a Canadian teenager in a very, very long time. The 18-year-old put up 51 points, including 15 goals and 36 assists, in just 31 games with Penn State last season. 51 points in 31 college games. As a teenager, playing against men who are years older and physically more developed than he is. And the way he does it is what sets him apart. It is not just the skating, though the skating is elite. It is not just the shot, though the shot is already NHL caliber. It is the way he reads the game. The way he sees plays developing 2 and 3 seconds before everyone else on the ice. The way he finds seams in coverage that players twice his age cannot find. McKenna is the real deal, and the fact that he is now a Toronto Maple Leaf is something that this franchise, this city, and this fan base have not had in a very, very long time. Genuine, undeniable hope for the future. Gavin McKenna is facing the immense pressure of being the first overall pick of an Original Six franchise with a storied history. And believe me, nobody in that Toronto locker room is going to let him forget that. But here is the thing about pressure. The right kind of pressure forged in the right kind of environment with the right kind of support system can be the fuel that turns a great player into a legendary one. And what Chayka has done is build that environment. He has brought in the veteran leadership, the defensive structure, the goaltending anchor, and now the generational talent to build around for the next decade. Rookie Gavin McKenna has already been making a straightforward statement about Austin Matthews, and the relationship between those two players is going to be one of the most fascinating storylines to watch when training camp opens in September. Because here you have Matthews, the established captain, the franchise cornerstone, the guy who has carried this team through the good times and the bad times, and now alongside him is this teenager from Whitehorse who the entire hockey world is telling us could be the next face of the league. How those two personalities mesh, how they push each other, how they coexist in the spotlight of the most scrutinized sports market in Canada. That dynamic alone could define this entire season. Speaking of the new look around the roster, Nick Paul, the Mississauga, Ontario native who can play either left wing or center, is expected to slot into Toronto's middle 6 forward group. The 31-year-old, who registered 15 points in 51 games last season, was acquired in a trade with the Lightning as part of the same wave of moves that brought Radish to town. Paul is exactly the kind of player that championship teams are built around in the middle six: physical, defensively responsible, capable of scoring timely goals, and someone who has already won a Stanley Cup. When you stack up the additions across this roster, the theme becomes crystal clear. John Chayka went out and found winners. Not just talented players. Winners. Players who know what it takes to go deep into the playoffs and get the job done when everything is on the line. And what about the coaching side of the equation? Because a roster transformation of this magnitude requires someone behind the bench who can synthesize all of these moving pieces